When the bright lights of America's Got Talent illuminated the stage that night in 2025, no one in the audience realized they were about to witness a moment that would be replayed across the world millions of times. The contestant walked slowly from backstage, each step heavy with nerves and memories. His name was Elijah Cruz, a 29-year-old Filipino singer who had traveled thousands of miles from a small coastal town in the Philippines. He stood alone at center stage, dressed simply, not flashy, not trying to impress anyone with style. His presence felt humble, almost fragile, as if the weight of his entire life rested on the microphone in front of him. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, already preparing for another familiar audition. He had heard countless Michael Jackson songs over the years, and most of them failed to capture the magic. Howie Mandel glanced at the crowd, Sofia Vergara smiled politely, and the guest judge that night watched with curiosity. The audience clapped kindly, but there was an unspoken skepticism floating in the air. Michael Jackson is not just a singer to cover. He is a legend, and legends are unforgiving to imitators. Terry Crews asked the question everyone was thinking. Why Michael Jackson? Elijah swallowed hard and smiled nervously. He explained that Michael Jackson was the reason he started singing as a child. Growing up, his family didn't have much. His father worked long hours as a fisherman, his mother sold homemade food at a roadside stall, and electricity was not always guaranteed. But one thing was constant. A battered old radio that sometimes caught international stations late at night. That was where he first heard Michael Jackson's voice, floating through the static like something from another world. Elijah said that when he heard those songs, he felt like he could escape. Escape the storms, the hunger, the fear of not knowing what tomorrow would bring. He practiced singing by the ocean, letting the waves drown out his mistakes. He learned English lyrics by sound, not meaning, repeating them again and again until they felt like his own. As he spoke, his voice cracked slightly, but he kept going. This performance, he said, was not about copying Michael Jackson. It was about honoring him and telling his own story through the music. Simon raised an eyebrow. He asked the question that made the room tense. Elijah, singing Michael Jackson is one of the hardest things you can do on this stage. What makes you think you can do it justice? The crowd held its breath. Elijah looked straight at Simon and replied softly but firmly that he didn't think he could. He just hoped he could make people feel something. The music began. At first, it was just a gentle instrumental intro, stripped down, slower than expected. Some audience members looked confused. This was not the high-energy Michael Jackson they were used to. Then Elijah sang the first line. His voice was smooth, controlled, and emotionally raw. It wasn't an imitation. It wasn't forced. It was his own tone, his own pain, carrying the soul of the song in a completely unexpected way. Within seconds, the atmosphere changed. People leaned forward in their seats. Sophia's smile faded into disbelief. Howie's mouth slowly opened. Simon uncrossed his arms. Elijah's voice climbed higher, not with the sharpness of a pop singer, but with the aching depth of someone who had lived every word. When he reached the chorus, the crowd erupted into spontaneous applause, interrupting the performance, something that rarely happens so early in an audition. But Elijah didn't stop. He closed his eyes and sang through the noise, his voice growing stronger, more confident. Halfway through the song, the arrangement shifted. The lights changed. The tempo picked up. Suddenly, the gentle tribute transformed into a powerful reimagining. Elijah added subtle vocal runs inspired by Filipino soul music, blending cultures in a way no one expected. It was Michael Jackson through a new lens, familiar yet completely fresh. Simon leaned forward now, his eyes locked on the stage. This was not what he had anticipated. He wasn't hearing a tribute act. He was witnessing an artist. As Elijah hit a high note that echoed through the theater, the camera cut to the audience. Some people were crying. Others were shaking their heads in disbelief. One woman covered her mouth with both hands, tears streaming down her face. Then came the first twist. As the music dropped to near silence, Elijah stepped back from the microphone. For a moment, it seemed like the song was over. The audience began to clap, thinking the performance had ended. But suddenly, a single spotlight appeared. Elijah spoke directly to the crowd, breaking the performance in a way no one expected. He shared that just months earlier, his father had passed away at sea during a storm. The last song he ever heard Elijah sing was this one. Elijah said he promised himself that if he ever sang it on a stage like this, he would finish it not as a performer, but as a son. The music returned, this time stripped down to just a piano. Elijah's voice trembled, but he sang anyway. This final section was slower, softer, and devastatingly honest. Each word landed like a confession. By the final note, the entire theater was on its feet. A standing ovation thundered through the room before the song even fully ended. Simon Cowell did something rare. He stood up. The applause roared, louder and longer than any audition that night. Elijah stood frozen, tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by the reaction. Terry Crews rushed onto the stage, wrapping him in a hug as the crowd continued cheering. When the judges finally spoke, their words only added to the moment. Howie called it one of the most emotional reinterpretations he had ever heard. Sophia said Elijah didn't just sing, he told a story that crossed borders. The guest judge admitted they had chills from start to finish. Then Simon spoke. He paused longer than usual, letting the silence build. He said that most people who sing Michael Jackson on this stage fail because they try to be him. Elijah didn't try to be Michael Jackson. He tried to be himself, and that was far more powerful. Simon admitted that he had been skeptical from the very beginning, but within seconds, Elijah proved him wrong. He said this was not just an audition, this was a moment. And then, without warning, Simon reached forward. The golden buzzer was pressed. Gold confetti exploded from above, raining down on Elijah as the crowd screamed. Elijah collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed, his hands covering his face as years of struggle, sacrifice, and doubt washed away in that instant. Terry Crews shouted over the noise, calling it one of the most shocking golden buzzer moments in recent AGT history. The camera captured Elijah's mother watching from backstage, crying uncontrollably as staff members hugged her. But the twists didn't end there. In a backstage interview moments later, Elijah revealed that he had nearly given up on coming to America. His visa had been denied twice. He sold his motorcycle, borrowed money from relatives, and almost missed his audition date due to a flight cancellation. He said that if any one thing had gone wrong, he wouldn't have been on that stage. The producers confirmed that Elijah was originally scheduled for a different audition day but was moved at the last minute, placing him directly in front of Simon that night. As the episode aired, social media exploded. Clips of Elijah's performance spread across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube within hours. Celebrities reacted. Musicians praised the originality. Fans from around the world shared their own stories of growing up with Michael Jackson's music. Many said Elijah's version made them hear the song differently for the first time in their lives. In the following rounds, Elijah continued to surprise everyone. Instead of sticking only to Michael Jackson, he blended pop, soul, and Filipino influences into every performance. Each round revealed a new layer of his artistry. Judges admitted they were no longer watching a contestant. They were watching a star in the making. Simon later stated in an interview that Elijah was one of the most unexpected discoveries he had ever seen on the show. But what truly made Elijah's journey special wasn't just the talent. It was the heart behind it. He often spoke about his hometown, about children singing by the ocean the way he once did, dreaming of stages they had never seen. He said his goal was not just to win, but to prove that where you come from does not limit how far you can go. By the time the finale approached, Elijah had become one of the most talked about contestants of the season. Whether he won or not almost felt secondary. His audition had already made history. It reminded millions of viewers why they fell in love with music in the first place. Not because of perfection, but because of emotion, honesty, and connection. As the episode ended, the final shot lingered on Elijah standing under the golden confetti, looking up as if seeing his father smiling back at him. A single moment. A single song. A life forever changed.